Yeah, so good morning, everyone. So let us begin today's lecture. So in the last lecture, we were continuing this topic of Mahill-Néron relations. So Mahill-Néron relations are something that are induced right, by an automaton. Right? So if you're given a regular language, right, and if you consider its automaton, then this automaton induces a relation on all strings in sigma star. Right? So sigma is the alphabet, then on all strings in sigma star, this automaton induces a relation which we call as the Mahill-Néron relation, right? And it simply says that two strings are related to each other if they both take the automaton to the same state, right, beginning from the start state. So we saw that this Mahill-Néron relations has certain interesting properties, right? Such as so it's an equivalence relation, and it's also a right congruence. It refines R, and it has finite index. In fact, we saw that there is a very strong correspondence between a Mahill-Néron relation and an automaton. Since that, if you're given an automaton, you can obtain its MN relation, and if you're given an MN relation, then you can obtain the corresponding automaton. Right? Such that the number of states in the automaton will be the same as the number of equivalence classes in the MN relation. Right? So our ultimate aim is to find the smallest automaton, right, or the minimal automaton in terms of number of states that accepts a given language. So instead of reasoning about automatons, we said that we are going to reason about MN relations, right? Because there's a direct one-to-one correspondence between an MN relation and an automaton. Okay. So now we are trying to find right, this sort of smallest this MN relation with the smallest number of equivalence classes corresponding to the given language. And towards that end, we had defined this notion of refinement. Right? So we say that if you are given two relations on the same set, then relation one refines relation two if and only if this relation one is a subset of relation two. Which means that if two elements are related by relation one, then they are also related by the relation two. Right? But the relation two may have more tuples, right? So more elements may be related to each other. So if relation one and relation two are both equivalence relations, then we saw this using examples, right? That in that case, the index or the number of equivalence classes of relation one will be at least as many as the number of equivalence classes or the index of relation two. It means that the index of relation one will basically be greater than or equal to the index of relation two. So this sort of gives us a way to characterize the MN relation that we are looking for. So we want an MN relation uh, which is uh, which is the coarsest MN relation, right? Which means that every other MN relation is going to refine this MN relation that we are looking for. Okay. So that's what we will do today. Right? So we will define this coarsest MN relation, and then we will show that the collapsing algorithm, right, the DFA minimization algorithm that we saw a couple of lectures back, actually computes this coarsest MN relation. So that would complete the proof that the DFA minimization algorithm actually gives the smallest or the minimum DFA accepting a given language. So are there any questions from yesterday's lecture? Okay. So in that case, let us continue with today's lecture. Okay. So as I said, right, we are going to define a new MN relation uh, on which is basically induced by a regular language. So let's say that so let's suppose that R is regular. So we are going to define this MN relation independent of any automaton. Right? So we are not going to consider any automaton, right? So this MN relation is purely dependent only on R. So we say that for all xy in sigma star. Right? So this is a relation on strings which are present in sigma star. Right? So this relation we are going to denote by this notation. Right? So we're going to use this notation, this relation subscript with R, in order to denote this core system and relations, we'll say that two strings X and Y are related to each other if and only if for all Z, XZ belongs to R, if and only if YZ belongs to R. So this is the definition of the core system and relation, right? So it says that two strings X and Y are related to each other if for every string Z, so let me also write the domain, for every string Z in sigma star, if XZ is in R, uh, then YZ should also be in R. So XZ is the concatenation of X and Z. Similarly, YZ is the concatenation of Y and Z. So this definition is very similar to how we defined the equivalence of states in a DFA, right? So we said that two states are equivalent if there doesn't exist a distinguishing string. Right? So that if every string that takes one state to a final state would also take the other state to a final state. Right? So if P and Q are related to each other, if and only if for all strings, right? For all strings X, delta at P comma X belongs to F, if and only if delta at Q comma X belongs to F. Right? So this is saying something very similar, right? So it's saying that X and Y are related to each other if and only if there doesn't exist a distinguishing string for X and Y, right? That's that if you add any suffix Z to X, right? Then if this XZ belongs to R, then YZ should also belong to R, right? And vice versa. So this is the definition of the relation, right? So we have yet to show that first of all this is an MN relation, and second that this is the core system MN relation. But before doing that, right, let's try to let's apply this relation, right? Let's compute this relation for some examples. Okay. Okay. So let's consider this language. So I have expressed this language using the regular expression. Right? So this is a regular language, 0, 1 star. Right? So it's going to consist of all strings which basically begin in 0, right? And then only contain 1 after that. Okay. And they may contain any number of ones. Right? So this is clearly a regular language. Okay. So let's try to compute. Let's try to compute which uh, which strings are related to each other, right? By this coarsest MN relation, right, that we define. Okay. So let's begin with the smallest strings. Right? So let's consider epsilon. And let's consider 0. So that's the next smallest string. Right? So let's consider epsilon and 0. So are epsilon and 0 related to each other? In the sense that does there exist a distinguishing string, right? Which if you add to epsilon, it will take you to a string in the language. But if you add to 0, then it will take you to a string that's not in the language. Okay, so Vinith is saying 0, 1. Okay. So, okay, that's right. So if you add 0, 1, right, to epsilon, then you get 0, 1, which is in the language. And if you add 0, 1 to this 0, then this doesn't belong to the language. So that's why, so epsilon and 0 are not related to each other, which means that they are going to be in separate equivalence classes, right, of this relation. Okay. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so now let's take some more examples, right? So what about 0 and 1? Are they related to each other? Okay. So Costa is saying 1, 1 distinguishes them. Okay. I see. So if you take 0, 1, 1, right, then that belongs to the language. While you take 1, 1, 1, then that clearly doesn't belong to the language. Okay. So 0 and 1 are also going to be in separate equivalence classes. Okay. What about epsilon and 1? So let me just also write down. So epsilon is not related to 0. Epsilon is not related to 1. Sorry, 0 is not related to 1. Okay, so what about epsilon and 1? Are they related to each other? Okay, so yeah, I think this we need give the example of 0, 1, right? So again, right, it's the same one. So if you take 0, 1, that epsilon 0, 1 belongs to R, while 1, 0, 1 doesn't belong to R. Okay, so epsilon and 1 are also not related to each other. So in fact, now yeah, you should be able to see a pattern here, right? So you should see that epsilon is not related to any other string in the language, right? Or rather, epsilon is not related to any other string in sigma star, right? So if you take epsilon, right, in any string, let's say W in sigma star, uh, right, so then you will see that epsilon 0 is going to belong in the language because epsilon 0 belongs to R, while W0 is definitely not going to belong in the language because the language says that so W is not epsilon, right? And the language doesn't really end with the string it's 0. Uh, so every string in the language begins in 0, but it will end in 1, right? As long as it basically contains more than one zeros, okay? Or rather, if its length is more than 1. So therefore, W0 is not going to be in the language, and therefore epsilon and W are going to be in separate equivalence classes. And it's also easy to see, right, that if you take two strings which are in the language, right, which are in R, then they will be related to each other. Uh, and similarly, if you take strings which are not epsilon and which are not in the language. So for example, we saw 1 is not in the language, right? And you can take any other string that's not in the language, but that's not epsilon, then all those strings are also going to be related to each other. So in fact, so this language, this relation, right, has three equivalence classes. So one is the equivalence class for epsilon. The other is the equivalence class of the language itself, which is the 0, 1 star. And the third is the equivalence language of all strings which are not epsilon, but which are not in the language. Right? So this will be strings like 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, and so on. So in fact, it would be, so this is basically sigma star minus 0, 1 star union epsilon. Okay. So these are going to be the three equivalence classes of this particular relation, right? And if you actually try to construct an automaton, right, which accepts this language, right? So how would that automaton look like, right? So the states of the automaton are exactly going to be these three equivalence classes, right? So the start state would be the equivalence class corresponding to epsilon, right? And then if you see a 0, right, then you will go here. Okay. If you see a 1, then you'll go here. See any amount of 1, you will stay here. And if you see a 0, then you'll go here. And then here you will remain if you have 0 and 1, and this is the final state. So in fact, so this will be the smallest automaton, right, which actually accepts this language. And the number of states in this automaton are 3, which is the same as the number of equivalence classes of the core system and relation for this language. So let's look at another example. So we can also do this for languages which we know are not regular. So let's consider this language, right? 0 to the power n, 1 to the power n, where n is greater than or equal to 0. So we know that this particular language is not regular. So we showed that it's not regular using the Pontine lemma. But so what are the equivalence classes, right, of this language? So you can see, right, that if you consider any string of the form, let's say 0 to the power I and 0 to the power j, then then these two strings are not related to each other, right? Because where I is not equal to j, because 1 to the power I is going to be a distinguishing string for them. So 0 to the power I and 1 to the power I belongs to R, while 0 to the power j and 1 to the power I does not belong to R. Okay. So therefore, these two languages, or rather these two strings, right, are not going to be related to each other for any I and j, right, where I is not equal to j, which means that, but however, there are multiple, there are infinite number of such strings. Right? So which means that this language, right, the courses domain relation that's induced by this language has actually an infinite number of equivalence classes. Okay? And that's why we cannot construct an automaton, right, a finite state automaton for this language. Okay. So this is also another way in which you can reason, right, about languages being non-regular. Right? So you can try to find the number of equivalence classes of this relation, right, of the courses domain relation. Okay, and and if the number of equivalence classes are not finite, then the language is not regular. Otherwise, it's regular. Okay. So any questions so far regarding these examples and the relation? Okay. Uh, right. So now let's try to formally also show, right, that this relation that we have defined, it's actually the co-system in relation. So let's call this as lemma 1. Okay. So we'll show that this relation Rn, this relation, right, is an MN relation, and it is the core system in relation. Okay. So in order to prove that some relation is an MN relation, we have to show it follows, it obeys all the properties of an MN relation. So first of all, it should be an equivalence relation. So that's very straightforward to see. So you can show that this relation is reflexive, symmetric, and it is transitive. Okay? So that's why it's an equivalence relation. So that is very straightforward. Then we have to show that this relation is a right congruence. So we need to prove that this relation is right congruence, right? Which means that we need to show that for all A which belongs to sigma, if if x is related to y, then that should imply that xa must also be related to ya. Okay. So how do I show this? So we want to show that so we are given that x is related to y, and we have to show that xa is related to ya. Right? In order to show that xa is related to ya, we need to show that there is no distinguishing string. So for x and y, so we show that for all z, if xaz belongs to R, then that should imply that YAZ should also belong to R. Okay? But so we know that since XAZ belongs to R, right, and X and Y are related to each other, right? So that would directly mean that YAZ would also belong to R. Okay? So this is from the fact that we know that X and Y are related to each other. So I can take AZ to be a string, right? Let's say some Z prime. So in that case, xz prime belongs to R. That would imply that yz prime also belongs to R. In fact, you can also add this other direction as well. Okay. So this means that, and this implies that xa is going to be related to y. Okay. So this is the first property that we want to show, which is that it is a right congruence. The second property is that it should be that it should refine R, which means that if so if x is related to y, right, then that should imply that X belongs to R if and only if Y belongs to R. This is very straightforward, right? Because you can take since X is related to Y, I know that for all Z, XZ belongs to R if and only if YZ belongs to R. So I can take Z to be epsilon, right? And that would mean that this property is directly to 1. So this is very straightforward. Okay. Then the third property that we have to show is that it has a finite index, right? Which means it has the number of equivalence classes are finite. Okay. So how do we show that? So instead of showing that directly, right, let's first show that it is the coarsest MN relation. Right? Because if we can show that, then we know that the number of equivalence classes of this relation would then be less than or equal to the number of equivalence classes of any other MN relation. Right? And since we know that this language is regular, there exists an automaton for this language. So I can take the MN relation that is induced by that automaton, right? And then that particular relation would refine this coarsest MN relation. And since and therefore, right, that would imply that this coarsest MN relation has a finite number of equivalence classes. Okay, so we will show that this relation, right, is actually the coarsest MN relation. So how do we show this, right? So let's say that we are given some MN relation, right? So let's say that this is an MN relation. That is induced by some automaton, right, corresponding to this language, and then we need to show that this relation refines R. So we need to prove that this relation refines the coarsest MN relation that we have defined. Okay. Which means that we need to show that whenever two strings are related by this first relation, then they are also related by the second relation. Okay? And remember that the only thing that we know about this first relation is that it is an MN relation, okay? Which means it obeys the properties of an MN relation. Okay? Okay, so how do we prove this? So let's say that I know that X and Y are related to each other by this relation. And I have to show that this means that X and Y are also related by this relation R. Okay? Which means that for all that there doesn't exist any distinguishing string which distinguishes X and Y. So remember that we know that the fact that since this is an MN relation, right, it means that it's also a right congruence, right? So this implies that for all symbols, right, if X and Y are related to each other, for all symbols A, XA and YA are also related to each other. Okay. So what can we say further, right? So we can show that that if X and Y are related to each other, then for all Z, XZ and YZ are also related to each other. For all Z belongs to sigma star. So you can prove this by induction on Z. And using the fact that it's a right congruence. And here, right, we can then use the fact that since it's an MN relation, it's also going to refine R itself, right? So which means that for all Z, XZ belongs to R, if and only if YZ belongs to R. So this is from the fact that this relation refines R. Okay. And then we are done, right? Because this is exactly the definition of this relation, right? So this would mean that X and Y are also related to each other by this relation. So this means that this relation that we have defined, right, is actually the coarsest MN relation. And that would also imply that, so if you take any other MN relation, then it refines this relation. And therefore, the number of equivalence classes of this relation are going to be less than or equal to the number of equivalence classes of the first relation. Right? So in fact, so that is that. So that is called the Myhill-Nerode theorem. So the Myhill-Nerode theorem says that R is regular if and only if this relation has a finite index. And so we have already proved this, right? According to the last lemma, this lemma 1. So if R is regular, then we know that there exists an automaton which accepts R. And then you take the Myhill-Nerode relation that is induced from that automaton. It's going to have a finite index. And since this relation, right, refines every other Mn relation, or rather every other Mn relation refines this relation underscore R, right? So that means that it would also have finite index. And the other direction is again straightforward, right? So if this relation has finite index, then in the last lecture, right, we saw how we can construct an automaton given an Mn relation. So in that case, we can construct the automaton corresponding to this Mn relation, and we know that that's going to accept this language R, right? And it's going to have a finite number of states. Therefore, the language R is regular. Okay, so are there any questions so far? Okay, so now there's just one more step that is remaining, which is to show that this collapsing algorithm, that this DFA state minimization algorithm that we saw in the before couple of lectures, right, actually computes the coarsest Mn relation. So let's quickly revise what that algorithm did, right? So that algorithm started with some arbitrary DFA corresponding to the language. And then it computed this relation between states of that DFA, right? So so let me so let me also write that relation, right? So we started with some DFA M, okay, and we computed this quotient automaton, right, which we said was denoted by this particular notation, and two states, right, are related by this relation. Uh, if and only if there doesn't exist any distinguishing string. So for all z, delta hat of p comma z belongs to f if and only if delta hat of q comma z belongs to f. Okay. So the states of this quotient automaton were the equivalence classes of this relation. Okay. So where we start with the original automaton M. Right? So this relation relates two states of the original automaton M, and it would then collapse all the states which are related to each other. Okay. So that in the final quotient automaton, right, the states would correspond to the equivalence classes of this relation. So what we will show, right, is that if you take this quotient automaton and if you compute the Mn relation of this that's induced by this quotient automaton, then that relation would be the same as the coarsest Mn relation. So we will show that if you take the Mn relation that is induced by the uh, quotient automaton, right? So this is the notation for the Mn relation that is induced by the quotient automaton. Then this is the same as the coarsest Mn relation. So again, right? So this is a relation on strings of sigma star. While so there are multiple relations here, right? So let me just again clarify everything, right? So this relation, right, that I'm marking here, right? So this is a relation on states of the DFA, right? while this relation, right, on the left hand side, this is a relation that is induced. This is an MN relation that is induced by the quotient automaton. And it's a relation on strings in sigma star. Right? Well, this is the coarsest MN relation. So it's also a relation on strings in sigma star. Okay? Uh, so we will show that these two relations are actually equal. Right? So we already know that since this relation on the right hand side is the coarsest MN relation, right? So we know that this relation, the MN relation that is induced by the quotient automaton, actually implies this coarsest MN relation. Right? So we only need to show the other direction, which is that the coarsest MN relation also implies the MN relation that is induced by the quotient automaton. Okay. Right. So let's actually again revise what is this MN relation that is induced by the quotient automaton, right? So we'll say that two strings x, right, are related by this relation if and only if uh, so this string should take the start state to the same state in the quotient automaton. So to say that sorry, there's no for all here. So if and only if delta hat of this s comma x is equal to delta hat of s comma y. Right? So note that this delta and s, right, they are from the quotient automaton. Right? So let's say that this quotient automaton, right, is defined as q sigma delta s and f. Right? So we know that this s is actually going to be the equivalence class uh, corresponding to the start state, right, of the original automaton. Okay, so Vikram is asking that UHV used implies instead of subset. Uh, you have
So
used.
in the
Yeah,
statement,
okay.
we know
Yeah,
that
yeah. Okay, so it's the same, right? So when we say subset, that means you can also use implication, right? So just as an aside, right? So when we say that some relation, right? So let's say relation 1, right, is a subset of relation 2, then that's the same as saying that relation 1 implies relation 2. Because whenever two elements are related by relation 1, then they are also related by relation 2. So these two statements are actually the same. Uh, is that clear? Okay, yeah. So yeah, I think when we defined refinement, right, we used subset. But I also said that the subset notation is the same as the implication, right? In the case of relation. Yeah. Okay. So we know that this MN relation that is induced by the quotient automaton implies the core system MN relation, or it's a subset of the core system MN relation, and we have to show the other way around, right? That whenever two strings are related by this core system MN relation, then they are also related by this MN relation induced by the quotient automaton. Okay. So okay, so let's yeah, and this is the way that we defined the MN relation that is induced by the quotient automaton. So two strings x and y are related by this relation if and only if they take in the quotient automaton, right? They basically take the start state to the same state. So we have to show that if two strings, right? So let me write down what we have to prove. So we have to prove that if x and y are related to each other by the quotient, by the coarsest MN relation, then that should imply that X and Y are also related to each other by this relation, the MN relation induced by the quotient automaton. Okay, so let's start from the left hand side. So let's say that two strings are related to each other by the coarsest MN relation. So we know, so now we can use the definition, right? So this means that for all z, there is no distinguishing string. So for all z, xz belongs to R if and only if yz belongs to R. Okay. Okay, so what can we do next? So we want to somehow relate this to the states, right, in the quotient automaton that you would get after processing these strings. So since xz belongs to R, right, that means that if you process this string xz in the quotient automaton, so we know that the quotient automaton actually accepts the same language as R. Okay, so we proved this. So this means that this string would take in the quotient automaton, right? It would take you from the start state to one of the final states. So which means that for all z, this delta hat of s comma xz belongs to f. Sorry. If and only if delta hat of s comma yz belongs to f. So this is directly using the fact that the quotient automaton accepts the language R, which means if xz belongs to R, then delta hat of s comma xz will belong to f. And similarly, if yz belongs to R, then delta hat of s comma yz is going to belong to f. Okay, so what can we say next? So I can break down this delta hat of s comma xz and delta hat of y comma s comma yz. So I can say that for all z, this would mean that delta hat of s comma x comma z belongs to f if and only if delta hat of s comma y comma z belongs to f. So essentially, right, if you want to process the string xz, right, you will first process the string x, and then you will process, and from the resulting state, you will process the string z. So that's all I've written. So I said that delta hat of s comma xz belongs to f, right, means that delta hat of s comma x comma z belongs to f. Right? So let me also write this down here. So what I've used is the fact that delta hat of s comma xz is the same as delta hat of s comma x comma z. So you can also prove this separately using induction. In fact, I think we have proved something similar, right? So we proved we proved a result that's similar to this when x is equal to a. Right? It's when x is a single, like a string of length 1, right? It's a symbol. Then we showed that this delta hat of s comma az is the same as this delta hat of s comma a comma z. Right? But you can prove this for any string x as well. Yeah, okay. So Vikram is saying we proved the same string. Okay, then that's fine. Okay. Okay, so now what can I say? So let's use this definition, right, of this equivalence relation between states. Right? So it's let's look at this definition. So this definition said that two states are related to each other if and only if there is no distinguishing string. So for all z, if delta hat of p comma z belongs to f, then delta hat of q comma z should also belong to f. So I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. This should be f. Okay. So here we have something similar, right? So we are saying that for all z, right, there is no distinguishing string between these two states. Right? In the sense that if a string z takes this state to a final state, then it will also take this other state to a final state. So this means that this delta hat of s comma x must be related to delta hat of s comma y. Okay. By this relation, right, that we defined on states of the automaton. But but this, right, so this means that since we have already collapsed the automaton, right, remember that we are working on the quotient automaton. So in the quotient automaton, if two states are related to each other, right, then we have already collapsed them together into a single state. Right? So this would imply that delta hat of s comma x is already equal to delta hat of s comma y, because these two states have already been collapsed together uh, into a single state. And in fact, this is the definition of this MN relation that is induced uh, by the automaton, right? So in fact, so here I have defined this, right? So two strings x and y are related to each other by this MN relation that is induced by the quotient automaton if and only if they take the start state to the same state. So this means that x and y are also related to each other by this MN relation that is induced by the quotient automaton. Okay. Yeah. So this then completes the proof, right? So we have shown that if two strings are related by the coarsest MN relation, then they are also related by this MN relation induced by the quotient automaton, and this finally proves the fact that these two relations are actually the same. So this is what we have shown. And this means that this finally proves the result that the automaton that we get after collapsing, right, the quotient automaton is actually the DFA with the least number of states, right, the minimal DFA. So they cannot exist. So if you start with some arbitrary DFA, you apply the DFA minimization algorithm, right, you collapse the states of the DFA as much as you can. And whatever DFA that you get, that's guaranteed to be the DFA with the smallest number of states. Okay. So are there any questions so far? So I see that in the last couple of lectures, right, people have been dropping off in the middle of the lectures, but yeah, I mean, I think that so this section of the course was very theoretical, right? But it needed to be, right? Because so we need this theoretical treatment, right? Because we are trying to show things that hold for all possible automatons, right? And that's why we sort of had to go through this entire proof, right? But yeah, but I hope that that people will go back and try to again look at these proofs, right? And this sort of this theory is very elegant, right? And it also illustrates, right, how you can uh, reason without actually constructing an automaton, right? So we haven't so in this section, right, in this topic, we haven't directly reasoned about automatons, right? Instead, we have just reasoned about this relations, right? And we just used algebraic properties of these relations in order to establish this statement, right, that this is the smallest automaton that you can construct. Okay. Okay, so if there are no more questions, right, then yeah, then we'll do one thing, right? So this actually finishes or completes the section on finite state automaton, right? Or and on regular languages. Okay. So let's see what. So I'll just quickly review, right, whatever we have done from the beginning of the course. Right? So we introduced. So this finite state automaton was the first abstraction that we introduced. It's an abstraction of a machine with a finite number of states, and we saw formally, right, how to express a DFA, right, which is a deterministic finite automaton. Okay. So this is a formal representation of a machine with a finite number of states, and we also saw, right, that from the point of view of so why are we interested in the language that is that's actually accepted by this machine? It's because we can express any task, right, any problem in the form of a language inclusion problem, and that's why we are interested in the languages that are accepted by this abstractions of machines. So we saw that the language that's accepted by this class of machines, right, machines with finite state, are called regular languages. Uh, and we also saw that you can sort of relax this deterministic requirement. So if you relax this deterministic requirement, then you get a non-deterministic finite automaton, and also an epsilon non-deterministic finite automaton, the epsilon NFA, right? Which also allows epsilon transitions. But we also saw that all these three representations, right, are actually the same, since that by introducing non-determinism, you do not really get uh, you're not able to express more languages, right? So all these three classes of machines accept regular languages only. We saw how to convert from one to the other. So we saw how to convert, for example, an NFA into a DFA, and also an epsilon NFA into an NFA. And then we saw another representation of regular languages, which is regular expressions. So let me denote this by RE. So RE is an abstraction of the regular language itself. Right? So it doesn't concern itself with this machine representation. So an RE is a very succinct way of describing all strings in a regular language. And we saw that this equivalence between REs and finite state automata. So that for every RE, right, you can basically construct the rather we saw this way around. Right? So for every regular expression, you can construct the epsilon NFA such that the language of the epsilon NFA is the same as the language that's described by the regular expression. And we also saw that given a DFA, right, you can also construct the regular expression corresponding to the language of the DFA. And so that all these four representations are actually the same. And then we sort of took a step back, right, and we looked at some properties of all regular languages, right, so which is the class of regular languages. So we proved closure properties of regular languages, right, where we showed that if you take any two regular languages, right, and you perform operations, right, like union and concatenation, intersection, right, or if you take a regular language itself, right, and consider its Kleene closure, right, or asterate, or the reversal operator, then all of these the class of regular languages is closed under all of these operations, which means that after performing these operations, you would get another regular language. Okay, and finally, right, we also seen decision properties of regular languages. So these are properties which talk about so where we basically say that, okay, we want, so given a language, right, we want to say something about that language, right? So is the language empty, or is the language infinite, or is some word present in the language or not? So we saw that there exist algorithms which, given some representation of the language, generally a DFA, right, or a finite state automaton, can automatically decide, right, or can automatically tell us about these properties of the languages. And finally, we also saw some limitations, right, of a regular language, right? So we proved this pumping lemma, which can be used to show that some language is not regular, right? So there are many languages which are not regular, and in order to show that some language is not regular, we can use the pumping lemma, or more accurately, we can use the contrapositive of the pumping lemma. And finally, right, so in the last week, we also seen the minimization algorithm. So given a particular regular language, how to find the minimum automaton, the minimum DFA, right, with the least number of states which accepts that language. And towards that end, we introduced this notion of Myhill-Nerod relations, right, in order to formally prove that this algorithm actually accepts this algorithm actually computes the minimum DFA. So this is DFA minimization. Okay. So in the books, right, there is also an NFA minimization algorithm which actually calculates the minimum NFA that corresponds to a language, right? So if you're given a regular language, there can again be many NFAs which accept that language. So how to find the smallest NFA which actually accepts this language, right? But so this NFA minimization is more of theoretical importance, right? Because since you cannot really have an NFA in real world, right? So there is no real world machine uh, corresponding to an NFA. So yeah, so we won't really go into NFA minimization. Okay. So in the next lecture, right, we'll begin the second part of this course, which is on context free languages, right, and push down automata. And yeah, so in the test, right, so there's a test also on Thursday. So I will again repeat this tomorrow as well, but the syllabus of the test is again going to be whatever we covered in the last 2 weeks, right? So which means it's basically going to be these three topics. Right? So decision properties, pumping lemma, and DFA minimization. Okay. Okay. So with that, I'll end the lecture today, right? And so we'll begin the new topic tomorrow. Yeah. So Vineet is asking that the smallest NFA will be exponentially smaller than the smallest DFA. Yeah, that is correct. So in fact, we already saw an example, right, where the DFA was exponentially larger than the NFA. But again, right, there can be many NFAs which accept the same language. Right? So how do you actually get the smallest NFA? That's the focus of NFA minimization. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.